everyone. And a huge thank you to Teacher Ricky,
Yes.
the mastermind behind this podcast,
Mm-hmm.
for letting us use his awesome channel.
Yeah.
If you're finding these deep dives helpful,
Yes.
hit that like button, share with your friends, and subscribe for more.
Please do.
We're tackling a common struggle today.
Okay.
Wanting to be productive,
Right.
but feeling stuck in a rut.
Ugh, I know that feeling.
We'll be diving deep into David Allen's Getting Things Done,
Oh, a classic.
which offers practical, everyday tips for boosting productivity.
Yes, yes. It's more than just making lists.
Right.
It's about achieving stress-free productivity.
Absolutely. So let's get right into it.
Okay.
One of the core principles of getting things done is this idea of taming open loops.
Ooh, those open loops.
Can you elaborate on what those are
Sure.
and why they're so crucial to productivity?
Well, you can think of open loops as anything pulling at your attention that isn't appropriately managed.
Okay.
It's that nagging feeling that you've forgotten something,
Right.
the project you keep meaning to start, or even just remembering to buy milk.
Oh, yeah.
Alan argues that these unmanaged commitments clutter our minds
Yes.
and create stress, which ultimately hinders our ability to focus
I can definitely see
and
that.
be productive.
That resonates with me.
Yeah,
There's a certain mental weight that lifts
totally.
when I finally write down all those to-dos swirling around in my head.
Oh, it's such a relief.
It's like clearing out mental clutter to make room for actual work.
Exactly. And from there,
Yeah.
Alan introduces his famous 5-stage process for managing action.
Okay, the 5 stages.
Capture, clarify, organize, reflect, and engage.
You've mentioned these stages before, and I'm curious,
Yeah.
from your experience, which one tends to trip people up the most?
That's interesting.
Yeah,
I often see people get stuck in the organize phase.
really?
They spend so much time trying to create the perfect system
Right.
with color-coded labels and elaborate folder structures
Uh,
that they never actually get to the engage part, the actual doing of the work.
Oh, so they never get to actually doing it. So it becomes more about the tools
Yes.
than the actions themselves.
Exactly. Alan emphasizes that any system,
Okay,
even a simple one, is better than no system at all.
I can see that.
It's about finding what works for you
Right.
and actually using it to move projects forward.
That's a great point.
Thanks.
So we've captured our open loops
Right.
and hopefully avoided getting bogged down in the organization phase.
Hopefully.
How does getting things done guide us in tackling bigger, more complex projects?
That's where Alan's 5 phases of project planning come in.
Okay, 5 phases for this.
Purpose, principles, outcome visioning, brainstorming, and organizing.
And those are all important.
They are, but
Well,
I think the
that's it.
first 2,
Okay.
purpose and principles,
Okay, purpose and principle.
are particularly crucial, especially when you're feeling stuck in a rut.
Let's unpack that.
Okay.
What makes those 2 phases so essential for getting unstuck?
Well, purpose is all about defining the why behind a project,
Okay.
and it's often overlooked.
Yeah, I can see that.
When we're feeling stuck, it can be helpful to revisit our motivations.
Right.
Why did we start this project in the first place?
Right.
What are we hoping to achieve?
Yeah.
Reconnecting with our why can reignite our passion and give us a renewed sense of direction.
I can see how that would be especially powerful when you're feeling lost
Yeah,
or uninspired.
absolutely.
It's like reminding yourself of the bigger picture and
Yeah.
why it matters.
Exactly. And then principles
Okay.
acts as a guide for your actions throughout the project.
Okay, so like a guiding post.
Exactly.
basically, step.
What values or guidelines will inform your decisions?
Okay.
Having clear principles helps you stay focused and aligned with your overall goals, even when faced with unexpected challenges
Right.
or distractions.
So important.
It really is.
It's like having a roadmap
Yes,
and a moral compass for your project,
I like that.
ensuring you stay on course
Yes,
and make decisions that are consistent with your values.
precisely. And I think this is particularly relevant for people who want to be more productive, but are feeling overwhelmed.
Right. Feeling stuck.
Yeah,
or-
finding your purpose and principles can bring a sense of clarity
Okay.
and control to a seemingly chaotic situation.
It's like creating a framework for action,
Yeah,
which can be incredibly grounding when you're feeling lost
Yes.
and uncertain.
absolutely. And once you have a clear purpose and
Yeah.
guiding principles in place,
Right.
the next phase,
Okay.
outcome visioning,
Uh-huh.
becomes even more powerful.
Tell me more about that.
Sure.
How does outcome visioning help with productivity?
It's all about letting your imagination run wild. and envisioning what success looks like.
Okay.
What's the ideal outcome for this project?
Okay, so really drilling down and specifying what you want to come out of it.
What will it feel like when you've achieved your goal?
So not just what it will look like,
Right.
but what it will feel like to have accomplished that.
Exactly.
I remember a time when I was struggling to write a screenplay.
Oh, wow.
I was so bogged down in the details that I lost sight of the bigger picture.
Yeah, I've been there.
It wasn't until I took a step back and visualized the final film,
Yeah.
imagining the audience's reaction,
Yes.
that I was able to break through my writer's block.
That's a perfect example.
Okay.
Outcome visioning helps us connect with the emotional payoff of our efforts.
Okay, so you're connecting with what it's going to feel like in the end so that
Yeah.
you're motivated.
Yes. It allows us to tap into the excitement and motivation that comes with envisioning a successful outcome.
It's like setting your sights on the summit before you even start the climb,
I like that.
which can provide the motivation
Oh,
and
okay.
inspiration you need to keep going when the going gets tough.
Exactly. And it can also help you identify potential obstacles and challenges.
Right.
So you can start thinking about how to overcome them.
So it's not just about daydreaming.
Right.
It's a strategic tool for planning
Yes.
and problem solving.
Absolutely.
We've got our purpose, our
Right.
principles, and
Yeah.
our vision.
Yes.
What comes next in the project planning process?
Next is brainstorming.
Okay.
This is all about generating ideas.
Yeah.
And as Alan suggests,
Right.
the key is to externalize this process.
Get those ideas out of our heads
Yes.
and into the real world.
You got it. Use whatever works for you.
Okay.
Be it a whiteboard, sticky notes,
Okay.
a mind mapping app, or even just a good old-fashioned pen and paper.
Classic.
The point is to create a visual representation of your ideas so you can start to see the connections and patterns.
There's something about getting those thoughts out of your head
I know, right?
that unlocks more creativity.
It's like magic.
It's like your brain has more space to breathe
Yes.
and make new connections when it's not trying to hold on to everything at once.
Alan calls this distributed cognition.
Distributed cognition.
The idea that externalizing our thinking can help us access more ideas than if we try to keep it all in our heads.
So using tools to help our brain think better.
Yeah, it's like giving your brain an external hard drive
Okay.
to store all those thoughts and ideas.
That's fascinating. So we've visualized our desired outcome
Right.
and brainstormed a bunch of ideas. What's the final phase of project planning?
The final phase is organizing.
Okay.
This is where you take all those great ideas
Right.
and start to create a plan.
Okay.
What are the concrete steps you need to take to achieve your desired outcome?
Okay, good.
Who's responsible for what?
Right.
What are the deadlines?
So this is where the rubber meets the road,
Yes.
turning those creative brainstorms into an actionable plan.
Exactly.
But does it need to be a complex, highly structured plan?
Well, not necessarily.
Or can it be something simpler?
It really depends on the project.
Okay.
For some projects,
Yes.
a simple list of next actions might be sufficient.
Right.
For
Okay.
others, you might need a more detailed project management system.
Okay.
The key is to choose the right level of complexity
Right.
for the project at hand.
I appreciate that flexible approach.
It just makes sense.
It's about finding the right tool for the job,
Exactly.
not getting bogged down in unnecessary complexity,
Right.
especially when you're trying to build momentum
Yes,
and overcome inertia.
You're right. And that brings us to another crucial aspect of getting things done.
Okay, what's that?
The physical workspace.
So our physical environment plays a role in our productivity.
Absolutely.
Tell me more.
Alan emphasizes the importance of a dedicated workspace, whether it's at home, at work, or even a makeshift setup on the go.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be fancy,
Right.
but it should be a space where you can focus without distractions.
So it's more about having a designated zone for productivity,
Yes.
no matter where you are,
That's right.
rather than needing a perfectly Instagrammable home. app.
Exactly. The key is to create a space that supports your work,
I like that.
not hinders it.
So we've got our workspace set up.
Okay?
We're clear on our purpose and principles,
Mm-hmm.
and we've brainstormed a bunch of ideas.
Right.
What's the next step in the getting things done methodology?
It's time for what Alan calls the mind sweep,
Okay.
capturing every thought, idea, and project that has your attention.
Okay, time for a good old-fashioned brain dump.
That's it.
What are some tips for making the most of this mind sweep?
Start by listing everything that's on your mind,
Okay.
no matter how big or small.
Okay. Write it all down.
It could be work deadlines, personal errands,
Uh,
creative projects, or even those someday maybe dreams.
okay, even the dreams.
Don't censor yourself. Just let it all flow out.
I can imagine some interesting things might surface during this process.
It can be surprising.
What's the benefit of getting all these things out of our heads and onto paper?
Well, as Alan puts it,
Okay.
until you've captured everything that has your attention, some part of you will still not totally trust
Wow, that's deep.
that you're working with the whole picture of your world.
So you're not fully in control
Right.
until you have it all down.
It's like you can't fully focus on the important things
Okay.
until you've acknowledged and addressed all the things,
Wow.
even the seemingly insignificant ones.
It's about creating a sense of completeness and control,
Yes,
which can be incredibly freeing.
exactly. And by getting everything out of your head,
Mm-hmm.
you free up mental RAM
Okay.
for increased focus and clarity.
So we've swept our minds,
Right.
cleared out the mental clutter,
Yes.
and hopefully identified some key projects.
That's the idea.
What happens next?
Okay, so
How do we move from this brain dump to actual action?
now it's time to process that in tray.
Okay.
And the key here is to determine the very next physical action required for each item.
Okay, so for every single item on that list
Exactly.
that came out of the brain dump.
This is where Alan's concept of next actions comes in.
Okay, break that down for us.
All right.
What exactly is the next action?
A next action is the very next physical, visible step
Okay.
you need to take to move an item forward.
Okay.
Not just thinking about it, not
Right.
planning it,
Right.
but the actual tangible action you can take right now.
I like that.
It's about being very specific.
So, for example, if I have planned trip to Italy on my Minesweep list,
Okay, yes.
the next action might be
Yeah.
research flights online or call my travel agent
Right.
or maybe even brainstorm destinations with my partner.
You've got it. The key is to get specific and actionable.
This is starting to feel very empowering.
Yeah, it can be.
It's like taking control
Yes.
and breaking down those overwhelming tasks into bite-sized chunks.
That's the beauty of getting things done. It's
Yeah.
about moving from vague intentions
Correct.
to concrete actions.
I like that a lot.
And here's a productivity trick that often helps people get unstuck.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Alan calls it the 2-minute rule.
What's the 2-minute rule?
It's simple.
Okay.
If an action takes less than 2 minutes to complete, do it immediately.
Oh, I love that.
Right.
It's amazing how many little tasks we can knock out in just a few minutes.
It's really powerful.
It's like clearing out the underbrush
Yeah.
to make way for the bigger trees.
And it has a ripple effect. One executive Alan worked with said that following the 2-minute rule actually gave
like
him
it.
an extra hour
Wow, an extra hour.
of discretionary time.
Really?
Okay.
That's amazing.
It is.
But what about those tasks that take longer than 2 minutes?
Okay, so for
For
those,
those we can't do ourselves?
that's where delegating and deferring come in.
Okay.
If you can delegate a task to someone else, do it.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And for those tasks that you need to do yourself,
Right.
but can't tackle right away,
Uh-huh.
schedule them for a specific time or add them to a context-based action list.
Context-based action lists.
Yes.
Tell me more about those.
Alan suggests creating lists for different contexts,
Right.
like calls, at computer, errands, and at home.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this could work.
This allows you to leverage your time and energy more effectively.
Right.
For example, if you have a few minutes free and you're near your computer,
Right.
you can knock out a few items from your at computer list.
That makes so much sense.
Right.
It's about aligning your actions with your available time
Yeah.
and resources.
Exactly. And within each context, you can prioritize tasks based on their urgency
Uh-huh.
and importance.
This system is really starting to come together.
I'm glad to hear that.
But what about those tasks we've delegated or deferred?
Right.
How do we keep track of those
Yeah.
and ensure things are moving forward?
That's where your waiting for list comes in.
Okay, the waiting for list.
It's a simple
Okay.
but crucial list for tracking all the things you're waiting on from other people.
Okay.
It could be a response to an email,
Uh-huh.
a deliverable from a colleague,
Yeah.
or even just a phone call back.
So it's like a holding pen for those delegated tasks.
Exactly.
Or things that are out of our immediate control.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And it's important to review this list regularly
Right, so you don't forget about them.
so you can follow up if necessary.
This system is incredibly comprehensive.
It is.
It feels so much more manageable than just trying to keep track of everything in my head.
It can be a lifesaver.
But I have to ask,
Yeah.
how do we maintain this system over time?
That's a good question.
It seems like it would be easy to let things slip through the cracks.
It can be. You're right. Consistency is key.
Consistency is key.
And that's where Alan's weekly review comes in.
Okay, the weekly review.
Yes.
I've heard a lot about this,
It's very important.
but I'd love to hear more about how it works in practice.
Of course.
What exactly do we do during a weekly review?
The weekly review involves several key steps.
Okay.
You'll review your calendar, action lists, project lists, and capture any new open loops that have popped up during the week.
Okay, so you're doing a new mind sweep, essentially.
Exactly.
But just for that past week.
So it's like a weekly check-in with ourselves to
Yeah.
make sure everything's on track
Right.
and nothing's falling behind.
Exactly. And as Alan points out,
Yeah,
you will invariably take in more opportunities
that's true.
than your system can process on a daily basis.
That's so true.
The weekly review helps you stay ahead of the curve
Yes.
and prevent those opportunities from turning into overwhelming obligations.
It's a lifesaver.
This is so helpful.
Yeah.
It's like pressing the reset button each week and ensuring that our system is truly working for us,
Yes.
not against us.
Precisely. And it's about creating a sense of clarity
Right.
and control,
Yes.
which can be incredibly empowering, especially when you're feeling overwhelmed.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
stuck in a rut.
This is all starting to feel much more manageable.
I'm so glad.
It's like I'm finally getting a handle
Yeah.
on all those to-dos and commitments that have been
uh.
swirling around in my head for who knows how long.
That's the power of getting things done. It's about taking back control of your time and energy so you can focus on what truly matters.
I love that.
I do too.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive into getting things done.
We have.
We've explored the core principles of capturing open loops,
Right.
clarified the 5 stages of action management,
Yes.
and delved into the 5 phases of project planning.
A lot of fives in there.
We've also touched on the importance of the physical workspace
Mm-hmm.
and the power of the weekly review. But I'm eager to hear more.
Of course.
What other insights and practical tips from getting things done can help our listeners boost their productivity and escape those ruts?
Well, there's a lot more to explore. For instance, we haven't even touched on Alan's brilliant approach to email management.
Email management.
Yes.
Now that's something I definitely need help with.
It's a game changer.
Okay.
It really is.
Stay tuned, everyone.
Yes, please do.
We'll be back after a short break
Okay.
to continue our deep dive into getting things done
Right.
and explore how we can tame the email beast once and for all.
I can't wait.
I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. Welcome back. I'm excited to share some more practical tips from getting things done that can help you be more productive and in control.
Before the break, you mentioned email management.
Yes.
It feels like email can be a major source of stress and distraction
Oh, definitely.
for a lot of people,
Yeah,
myself included.
of course.
Does Alan offer any guidance on how to tackle this beast?
He absolutely does.
Okay, good.
And it's one of my favorite parts of the book.
Really?
His approach is all about treating your inbox like a physical in-tray.
So instead of letting emails pile up in our inbox,
Right.
we're moving them into our trusted getting things done system.
You got it.
I like where this is going.
Exactly. Just like you wouldn't leave physical mail piled up in your mailbox indefinitely.
Right. You got to check it.
You shouldn't let emails languish in your inbox.
You're right.
The goal is to process your inbox to zero
Okay.
as quickly as possible.
Process to zero. That sounds like a lofty goal.
It can be
Is it really achievable?
more than you might think.
Okay.
The key is having a clear system for processing each email.
Okay, so what would that look like?
Alan suggests we ask ourselves a few simple questions.
Okay.
Is it actionable?
Okay, so first,
Not meet it.
get rid of it.
Archive it?
Okay.
Or file it for reference.
Okay, so those are the 3 options if it's not actionable.
Right, but if it is actionable,
Okay, then what?
the next question is, what's the next action?
Okay, so again.
And just like any other task,
Yeah.
that next action should be a specific,
Okay.
physical, visible step you can take.
So it's about applying the same next action thinking to email
Exactly.
that we apply to any other task.
Exactly. And then, based on the next action,
Okay.
you decide what to do with the email.
All right.
If it's a 2-minute task,
For the 2-minute rule.
do it immediately.
Love it.
If it's something you can delegate, forward it on.
Right.
And if it's something you need to do yourself,
Okay.
but can't tackle right away,
Okay.
schedule it or add it to a context-based action list.
I see.
So we're not just,
So rather than getting sucked into the endless scroll of our inboxes,
all that scrolling.
we're making conscious decisions about each email.
Yes.
And moving it out of that holding pattern.
You got it. And Alan offers some helpful tips
Okay.
for managing those emails we need to keep for later action. He suggests creating folders for different categories.
Okay.
Like at action, at waiting for, and at someday maybe.
That's clever.
Yeah.
So instead of feeling overwhelmed by a jumble of messages,
Right, all that chaos.
we have a clear,
Yes.
organized system for tracking our email commitments.
Exactly. And it can really reduce that feeling of email anxiety.
Absolutely.
But even with the best systems in place, there are still days when we might feel stuck or unmotivated.
For sure. Those days when it feels like you're spinning your wheels and not making any real progress.
I know those days.
What's the antidote to that stuck feeling?
That's a good question.
Does Alan offer any advice?
He does. His advice is surprisingly simple.
Okay.
Focus on completing something. Anything.
Okay.
No matter how small.
So anything at all.
He calls it mastering the mundane.
Mastering the mundane. I like that.
Me too.
So instead of getting overwhelmed by the big picture,
Right.
just focus on taking one small step forward.
Exactly. It could be like clearing out your in-tray, tackling a few 2-minute tasks, or even just filing some papers.
Okay, so even something really simple.
The key is to get some momentum going.
Okay.
And that can often create a ripple effect,
Okay.
leading to more and more productivity.
It's like those days when you just don't feel like going to the gym.
Oh, yeah.
But once you get there
I know.
and start moving,
Yeah.
you suddenly feel energized
Right.
and motivated to keep going.
That's a perfect analogy.
Right.
And Alan emphasizes that the sense of accomplishment we get from completing tasks, even the small ones, can be incredibly motivating.
It's like those little wins create a positive feedback loop,
Yes.
boosting our confidence
Exactly.
and making us more likely to stick with our system.
I agree.
But there's a subtle difference between being busy and being productive, right?
That's a good point.
How does getting things done help us distinguish between the two?
That's an insightful question. And it gets to the heart of Alan's philosophy.
Okay, what's that?
He argues that the source of our stress isn't necessarily having too much to do.
Okay.
It's the feeling of breaking agreements with ourselves.
Breaking agreements with ourselves.
Yes.
That's an interesting way to put it.
It is.
Tell me more.
Think about it.
Okay.
When we tell ourselves we're going to do something
Right.
and then don't follow through,
Uh-huh.
it creates a sense of dissonance
Okay.
and unease.
I see that.
We've essentially broken a promise to ourselves.
I see. It's like we're letting ourselves down,
Yes.
which can erode our self-trust
Right.
and make it even harder to get things done in the future.
Exactly.
So breaking those promises
Right.
can lead to us breaking more promises.
It's a slippery slope.
And Alan suggests that by getting those commitments out of our heads
Yes.
and into a trusted system, we're less likely to break those agreements with ourselves. We're making those commitments visible and actionable,
Right.
which makes us more accountable to ourselves.
Sure. That's like having an accountability partner.
That's a powerful point.
Yeah.
It's not just about managing tasks.
Right.
It's about building a relationship of trust
Yes.
and reliability with ourselves.
I love that.
So how does all of this fit into the bigger picture?
That's a great question.
How does getting things done help us achieve our overall life goals and
Yeah.
aspirations?
That's a great question, and it gets to the heart of Alan's message.
Okay, good.
Getting things done is not just about productivity for its own sake.
Okay.
It's about creating space for what truly matters.
Space for what truly matters.
Yes.
I love that.
I do too.
So it's about using productivity as a tool for living a more meaningful
Yeah.
and fulfilling life.
Precisely. It's about aligning our actions with our values,
Yeah.
our purpose, and
Right.
our long-term goals.
I'm starting to see getting things done not just as a productivity system, but as a philosophy for living a more intentional and fulfilling life.
Exactly. You're right on the mark. And Alan's ideas have been validated
Oh, wow.
by research in cognitive science.
Okay, cognitive science. This is getting interesting.
It is fascinating.
Tell me more about the connection between getting things done
Sure.
and how our brains work.
Researchers have found that our brains are actually terrible
Oh,
at remembering things out of the blue.
really? But I thought a good memory was the key to productivity.
You would think so.
Right.
It turns out that's not the case.
Okay.
Our short-term memory is very limited. And trying to keep track of all our commitments in our heads actually reduces our cognitive capacity.
So it's almost like we're holding our brain back
It is.
by trying to use it to remember things.
And it increases stress.
So it's like our brains are running on overload,
Yes.
trying to juggle too many things at once.
Too many balls in the air.
which ultimately makes us less productive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where getting things done comes in. By externalizing those commitments and getting them into a trusted system,
Okay.
we free up mental RAM
Uh-huh.
for more creative
Right.
and productive thinking.
It's like decluttering our mental workspace so we
Yeah.
can focus on the task at hand.
Precisely. And research has also shown that our brains are much better at thinking creatively when they have something specific to focus on.
Okay, so more specific,
Yeah.
less general.
So by giving our brains those concrete next actions and well-defined projects, we're actually enhancing our cognitive abilities
Okay.
and unlocking our creative potential.
Yeah, you got it. And that can lead to a state of flow.
Flow.
That feeling of being completely absorbed
Burn.
and engaged in what we're doing,
Yes.
which is when we're often at our most productive and
It's
creative.
flow state. It's like being in the zone where
Yeah.
time seems to disappear and
Absolutely.
everything just clicks into place.
Exactly. And getting things done can help us access that flow state more often,
You can.
both in our work and in our personal lives.
Absolutely.
This is all so empowering.
It is, right?
Like we're not just getting things done,
Right.
we're unlocking our full potential.
Exactly.
But I'm curious,
Yeah.
how does Alan define mastery in the context of getting things done? Is it about reaching some mythical state of inbox zero
No, it's not quite that.
and never feeling stressed again?
No, it's a good question.
All right.
And the answer is surprisingly nuanced.
Okay.
Alan suggests that mastery is not about achieving some static end state.
Okay.
It's about developing a dynamic
Okay, so it's
and adaptable approach to managing our workflow.
dynamic and adaptable.
It is.
So it's not about perfection.
No.
It's about being responsive
Yeah.
and resilient in the face of ever-changing demands.
Exactly.
That feels much more attainable.
And he describes 3 tiers of mastery in getting things done.
Okay, 3 tiers of mastery.
The first tier is all about employing the fundamentals.
Okay, like getting started.
Getting those open loops out of your head,
Right.
defining next actions, and creating a trusted system.
Okay, the basics.
That makes sense as a starting point.
Right. What's the second tier of mastery look like?
The second tier is about implementing a more integrated and holistic approach to life management.
Okay, so it's getting bigger.
This is where you start to see the connections between your projects,
Uh-huh.
your areas of focus,
Okay.
and your long-term goals.
So it's about moving beyond just managing tasks to managing your life as a whole.
Precisely.
That's a big leap.
And at this tier,
Mm-hmm.
your projects list becomes a key driver of your actions.
Okay, the projects list is important.
It's not just a list of things you need to do. It's a reflection of your priorities, your values, and your aspirations.
I love that. It's like your projects list becomes a roadmap for living a more intentional
And fulfilling life.
Exactly. Your system becomes more than just a collection of lists and tools.
Okay.
It becomes a control room for navigating your life.
A control room.
Yes.
That's a powerful image. I'm already feeling more in control just thinking about it.
They can be very powerful.
What about the third
Okay.
and presumably most advanced
Right.
tier of mastery?
The third tier is all about leveraging your skills and systems to create space for creative expression and expansion.
So it's getting really big now.
This is where getting things done becomes less about managing the demands of the external world and more about creating the conditions for inner growth and fulfillment.
Wow. So it's about moving beyond just being productive to being truly creative and impactful.
Exactly. At this tier, you're not just reacting to inputs.
Right.
You're generating outputs.
Okay. Interesting.
You're using your system to support your creative endeavors and make a meaningful contribution to the world.
This is so inspiring. It's really amazing.
And getting things done isn't just a way to manage our to-do lists.
Right.
It's a path to unlocking our full potential
Yes.
and living a more purposeful life.
You've captured it perfectly. And it all starts with those simple but profound habits. Capturing, clarifying, organizing, reflecting, engaging.
This has been such an enlightening deep dive.
I'm glad.
I'm feeling energized and motivated
Good.
to put these principles into practice.
Yes.
And really start mastering my workflow.
That's great.
But before we wrap up,
Okay.
I'd love to hear your key takeaways from Alan's work.
You sure?
What are those nuggets of wisdom that have really stuck with you?
For me, it's the power of capturing those open loops. It's remarkable how much mental energy we expend just trying to remember everything we need to do.
Oh, yeah, sure.
By offloading those commitments into a trusted system, we free up our mental bandwidth for the work that matters.
That resonates with me. It's like decluttering our mental workspace.
Totally.
Making space for creativity and clarity.
Absolutely.
What else stands out to you as a key takeaway from Alan's work?
The importance of defining next actions.
Right.
It's all too easy to get trapped in planning mode.
Oh, yeah.
Endlessly thinking about what we need to do without taking concrete steps.
Oh, true.
By breaking down large, daunting tasks into those smaller, actionable steps.
Oh, right.
We make it much easier to initiate progress.
It's the difference between vaguely intending to do something and actually making it happen.
Precisely. And it reinforces the idea that even seemingly insignificant tasks deserve our attention and respect.
I like that.
Another takeaway that has been deeply impactful for me is the understanding that our brains are wired for creative thinking when given a specific focus.
That's fascinating.
It is.
So by providing our brains with those clear next actions and well-defined projects, we're essentially optimizing our cognitive abilities.
Exactly. And this can lead to more frequent experiences of flow state.
Oh, yeah.
Flow state, that feeling of being completely absorbed and engaged in what we're doing.
Flow state. That's when we're truly in the zone.
Exactly.
Time seems to melt away.
Yes.
And we're at our most productive and creative.
Precisely. And getting things done offers a practical framework for accessing that flow state more consistently, both in our professional and personal lives.
I'm beginning to see getting things done not just as a productivity system, but as a philosophy for living a more intentional and fulfilling life.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's about reclaiming our time and energy.
Yes.
Creating space for what truly matters. And cultivating a sense of clarity and control, even amidst the complexities of modern life.
This has been such a rewarding deep dive.
I'm so glad to hear that.
I feel like I've gained a whole new toolkit for tackling my to-do list. Achieving my goals.
Awesome.
And most importantly, living a more mindful and meaningful life.
That's what it's all about.
Absolutely.
And I encourage you and all our listeners to select one principle from getting things done and begin applying it today.
Right.
Even small changes can have a ripple effect, leading to greater clarity, focus, and peace of mind.
Great advice. Small steps can lead to big impact.
They really can.
And a huge thank you to Teacher Ricky.
Yes, thank you, Teacher Ricky.
The inspiration behind this podcast, for generously allowing us to use his platform.
We appreciate it.
If you've been enjoying these deep dives, please hit that like button, share with your friends.
We do.
And subscribe to stay updated on future episodes.
We'd love to have you back.
And remember, as David Allen wisely reminds us, imagine having a mind like water.
I love that quote.
Effortlessly handling any disturbance.
It's so powerful.
What would that look like in your life?
That's a great question for everyone to think about.
That's a beautiful and thought-provoking image to leave us with.
It really is.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into getting things done.
It's been a pleasure.
Have a productive day ahead.
I hope so.